I'm Tim Ventura from AmericanAntiGravity.com, and I'm speaking tonight with Mike Windell, who's been working with Warren York on a number of time dilation and other anomalous experiments. Well, Mike, thanks for joining us. Let's launch right into it and start out with kind of an overview of some of the effects that you've seen.
Well, to begin with, we have developed what we feel to be somewhat of a new technology regarding cold plasma beams that are tuned specifically for different frequencies and different phase angles and different pulse widths. And the net result is that we can alter the crystalline structure of almost any material, at least that we've tested, and we've tested quite a few. We can change hardness, we can change the color index, we can change almost any of the physical properties of almost any crystalline material. And this applies as well to semiconductors, which we have experimented with, and we can, for instance, take a photocell right off the shelf, and after it's exposed to the beam, we normally find that it increases its efficiency by about 30%.
Okay.
With semiconductors like transistor switches and gates, we can increase the switching speed and generally improve the performance about 30% also. Now, we have actually not done exhaustive testing on the semiconductors, but our preliminary tests indicate that this would indeed be a whole new field that should be looked into. And as far as hardening metals, as far as hardening even things like quartz to make them appear to have the same hardness as a diamond, it has obvious industrial possibilities.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of the cold plasma beam, this is something that I'd also discussed with Warren a bit. He sent me over some photos on CD-ROM that we're going to incorporate into a written story. And I have to tell you, you guys have done top-notch work here. It looks like it's almost a bit like a neon light, but there are striations in a beam of plasma that almost resemble. They're almost like whirls in a tornado, and they look like they may be the product of some kind of scalar process. Do you think that might be what's occurring?
We are creating a scalar vortex in the plasma itself, and the striations that you see in some of the photos are resonant peaks and nodes on the plasma itself caused by a resonance phenomenon.
Okay. Now, from what Warren had said, and I guess this is reinforced by what you've said about being able to change the crystalline structure of different materials, this almost reminds me a bit of the Hutchison Effect. Do you think there might be a comparison there?
There is a definite correlation between the two. A lot of the things that John Hutchison has experienced, we have seen the same thing here. We have seen, I'll give you an example. We had a case where we were messing around with the drivers for the beam, and we accidentally overloaded the circuit. It blew all of the circuit breakers, and there was no power going to the beam, but yet the beam was still running, and it was very brilliant. And I captured that almost by accident on a tape, and I put it on a disc.
That's almost scary, actually. It was as if it Maybe that was the time dilation effect. Do you think?
We feel that it probably represented a time dilation factor, which leads us to believe also that that could be very similar to uh, uh, tapping into 0 point energy,
Yeah.
sort of an over unity type scenario.
So I guess in walking us through, you'd said you'd applied too much power to it, and you've got the lab running, you have all the equipment running, and you've got the beam stabilized, and then pop, all of the breakers go out at once. You're in a darkened
Yep,
room downstairs, right? There are no lights, no light coming in, and
nothing.
the beam is still hanging there in the air, running inside of this
Yeah,
chamber with no power.
with no energy going to it.
Hmm. Quite remarkable. Well, now Warren had also said that the power went out for all of the houses on the block, and that a lineman had come out in the middle of the night to fix that. And,
Yes, that was kind of incredible. We after we had shut down the first beam experiment, mainly because we blew out a incandescent bulb that we were using as part of the experiment, and I didn't have any replacements, so we decided to call it a night. Well, as we're leaving the lab across the backyard of my house, I hear this clunk, 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 and it's the spurs that a lineman is wearing. And I asked him as he was going across the yard, I asked him what the problem was, and he says nobody in this entire neighborhood has any electricity. And I look around, all of the street lights are on, all of the window lights are on in the houses, the porch lights are on, and I thought to myself, wow, what is this guy smoking? Because he obviously was seeing something that we weren't, or actually vice versa, he wasn't seeing something that we were. And so we watch him as he climbs the pole and he gets up there. We had caught this on tape, fortunately, and he is had this dumbfounded look on his face. It's almost like he doesn't even know where he is. And he's just poking at wires. He had a glove on, he's just poking with his finger these wires and looking around, and he takes his cap off, scratches his head, and is looking around, totally oblivious, to the real world, apparently. And what was really significant, we noticed later on that there was a bright porch light in the back of the pole. Now, we could see it, but on the tape where we were taping, it was pitch black. So apparently, whatever dimension this guy was in, perspective-wise, so was the camera.
Okay.
And then after that, why, we were kind of, just sort of.
Yeah,
really
that's a
in shock,
spooky experience. Well,
Yeah.
let's go back to some of the materials changes. Now, you've said, I guess what I'd like to see is how this technology can drive forward to really improve tools and machinery and materials, I guess. And you've said that you get a 30% increase by maybe by aligning the molecules in transistors and diodes and things like that.
It seems to be that's what's happening, yes.
Yeah, so in terms of applying this technology, then really one of the industrial applications for it would seem to be, you use this as a run through. You run your part through a chamber that has this on it for a few seconds, and then I guess when it comes out the other side, it just works better. Now in terms of metals and stuff, does that hold true there as well? It makes them stronger.
Um, yeah, it makes them. I don't know about stronger, but it would seem like it would. It definitely can make them harder or softer.
Okay.
to give you an example, we put a little piece of quartz crystal in that we chiseled off a larger piece, and we put it in the beam, and we took it was in for maybe 30 seconds. We were tuning it, and I guess we hit the right point, and we took it out. We hit it with a hammer on an anvil, and it flattened out like a piece of solder.
Oh, so this is very much like Hutchison stuff then.
Yeah, and then we took another piece of quartz crystal off the same chunk and put it in the beam and retuned it to a different frequency and a different phase angle. And we took and tested the hardness of the quartz in it against a diamond, and it was harder than the diamond.
Well, now, out of curiosity, have you seen any of the, I guess they might call it juxtaposition, but, you know, Hutchison, it looks like you guys are on the verge of jellification, which Hutchison had, but have you had any materials combined with each other? Like Hutchison talked about a piece of wood. In fact, I've seen the sample. He has a piece of wood, not burnt at all. The grain is still perfect on it, that is completely embedded in a block of aluminum.
Yeah, I've seen that picture. We did not experience anything like that, but then again, we weren't trying to achieve that. I'm sure that if we were to experiment a little further with it, that we probably could duplicate that. We have noticed some very odd things happening, though, after we turned the beam off. As one example, after we had turned the beam off and everybody went to a different portion of the workshop to work on something else, and all of a sudden, boom! It was sounded like a semi truck had hit the side of the building. Now, where the building is sitting, it's only 5 feet away from a 6-foot rock wall. So obviously nothing could hit it from that angle. And then the driveway and the area right behind it is probably only about 30 feet, and there were no vehicles, no anything there. After that happened, I went outside, I inspected the walls, I even went up on the roof, which is flat, and it's eventually going to be a patio up there. And I inspected it. I inspected everything, and there wasn't anything, no marks. There was no evidence of anything out of the way.
Amazing, yeah.
But yet it was such a concussion that it almost knocked over the beam machine, the pedestal that it sits on.
Well, again, in terms of the equipment they're using for this, I've seen one photo, at least, and I think there's some more on the disc that I haven't seen yet, that Warren had sent over. And it looks like there are maybe a few neon drivers and a couple of signal generators. And it looks like, in many ways, a somewhat conventional setup. Although, I should also note, there are a bunch of pictures in here. I mean, again, the neon apparatus, or the vacuum chamber is just amazing. But there's some really interesting tubes, vacuum tubes, also. Could you tell us about those?
Actually, those aren't vacuum tubes. Those are a specially wound set of coils. And the coils are highly proprietary. They're wound around a permanent magnet core, and they have special windings. And then they're being driven independently by 2 separate drivers, one for each electrode, so that we can tune the beam on one side to one frequency and tune the beam on the other electrode to a different set of parameters. And where they meet in the middle is where we get the results. Is where we notice the phenomenon occurring.
Now, does the beam itself, again, a cold plasma beam, does this rotate? Because some of the some of the striations in it, again, it's almost like looking at a tornado a little bit. You
It
have
is. It's a vortex, and we can change the rotational speed. We can change every aspect of that by tuning the two individual beams against each other. And it's like you have two electrodes. Each electrode has its own beam,
okay.
and they meet in the middle, and that's where the phenomenon occurs.
Yeah, yeah. So rotating gas vortex. Ari de Geis has been working on something that may be a little bit similar, and he claims that he's producing fusion as a result. And I've seen video of it. The video, it looks like something is going on. I mean, there's definitely something there. And gas vortexes keep coming up again and again in terms of gravity modification. So I can't help but wonder if you guys are really tapping into something here. I mean, it looks like there's definitely something, although it's.
I'm positive of it. We've seen evidence to where we're actually maybe punching a hole in the continuum, and things kind of go back and forth between two universes. We've seen evidence. We've seen evidence of actually entities emerging from this.
John had said that also. In fact, that's one of the lesser known pictures. In the early 1980s, I believe he and George Hathaway saw this. They were experimenting, classic Hutchison Effect experiments. And they had the camera running. The camera didn't pick up the face, I guess, but they claimed that they saw some kind of, to them it looked like an entity, and it was in a giant ball of plasma that just spontaneously appeared. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's to me, it really says something to keep hearing the same kind of stories over and over again. From people who may not be familiar with them, or are working on related experiments. So.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is remarkable technology. Now, in terms of funding, I understand that you guys are actually just working on a deal there for that. Can you tell us anything about that, or is that still too proprietary?
Repeat that, please. I got distracted for a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. In terms of funding, I've heard that you guys are closing a deal for funding, and I'm wondering.
Well, it isn't written in stone yet, but it looks like it's about 99% for sure.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, I'll know more Monday about it. Like I say, it's on a scale of 1 to 10. It's 999.
Yeah, yeah. Now, once the funding comes through, if not from this source, then from another source, what is the next step for these experiments?
Well, first of all, we have two proprietary projects. One is a new type of anomaly detector, which is kind of like a underground radar. The other one is our ambient energy cell, which is like a battery that never needs to be charged.
Okay.
It runs forever, and it taps into 0-point energy. That is also a product of the beam machine.
Oh, okay. So this has many, many different applications then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tons.
Well, Mike, we're almost out of time for this evening, but I wanted to say thank you yet again for joining us. And we'll continue to add material to American Anti-Gravity, and we've also referred people over to Warren's website. Do you have a unique URL for your own work, or is Warren's the best?
Right now we're using Warren's, and we're developing a new one. It probably won't be ready for another 30 days.
So something to look forward to in the future then.
Right, and I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Tim.
Well, thanks again, and have a nice evening.
You do the same, sir.